Welcome to Stuck, Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. And I'm always happy to be talking to somebody who's an investor. So today we're going to be talking with Ken Mocabee from Parux about why you should fall in love with the problem, among other things. Thanks for coming, Ken.
Thank you, Mary. Happy to be here.
Great. So why should people fall in love with the problem?
Very often, someone comes in with an idea. It's the idea of, if somebody's got a thing that they want to try, that they think there's going to be a need for it, but they haven't really validated it. They haven't really tested it. There's a unmet need, or it solves a particular problem in an industry or a particular customer. So those startups are at particularly high risk. The companies that do well are the ones that start off with the needs-based. So it's not an idea-based startup, it's a needs-based startup that they're looking at the unmet need and the problem first, and then they're looking at whether or not it's a viable opportunity for them to solve that problem and to build a product or build a service in order to fulfill that need.
And you're absolutely right. It's about, is this a good idea? Is there a need in the marketplace? And then how much are you willing to pay for me to solve your problem?
You have to go beyond just solving the problem too. That is certainly a first step. But there are many things that can torpedo a startup in trying to get into the market. Hidden blockers, switching costs. There are network effects that there's a particular momentum that a particular product in the marketplace, they hold that position. And it's really hard to knock them off their perch. And so those are the things that have to be evaluated very, very carefully. Nobody wants to concentrate on failure, but by concentrating on the things that might be blockers, then you address those before you build it instead of trying to pivot and figure that out at the end.
Right. And some of it is investigating your competition and really making sure that if this has sort of been done before, maybe you can collaborate with whoever's already there and make it happen better. Or maybe you need to be realistic about somebody else is doing this already and you need to move on to something else.
There are certain industries where credibility and experience and size of your company and all of that make a huge difference. We've worked with companies in the healthcare business, healthcare industry, and they bring a product to the market and they don't have their security together. So when they get vetted by the larger healthcare companies, they're not really prepared to be a vendor for them. I was talking to a company one time, and his issue was for his particular industry, there was one company that had been around for like 25 years and had a really old product, but very successful product in the marketplace and owned that space. The issue was that all of the network around this particular industry was run by this company on a Facebook group. And his idea was if we can make the product better and we can build in all of that interaction into the platform itself, that it'll be a no-brainer. It'll be phenomenal. What he didn't realize, and what he should have realized, is that in order to get anybody, they all had to come over. Because as soon as if one came over, they've lost the network. And so he had zero traction, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this platform. And that was easily something that he could have anticipated and known about before he built the product. And we see those kinds of things all the time where founders shoot themselves in the foot. They've plowed forward ahead without really looking at all the implications and all the different potential blockers within their particular industry or their particular customer base.
Sounds very interesting. Do you have any other particular tips for startups these days?
So, yeah, I think really the main thing is, like you said, the validation part is something where we just don't see enough attention. And I did want to touch on a couple of things that I think are important. About 95% of all startups fail within the first 5 years. And that's really stunning. Those are huge numbers. But the thing is it's not really by chance. the 5% that succeed do things that the other 95% don't. And that's really what we've been focusing on the last few years is like, okay, what are those things that help you and nothing can guarantee success, but to minimize the risk and make sure that when you've built your product, that you've done it the right way, that you understand your market, like you said, the customers, that you understand the competition. Those things are critical. And we just see so many people that have built a product, they spend a lot of money on it, and then when it doesn't get traction, they're surprised. And that kind of approach is really, really tough. We're big proponents of something called design thinking. And if you're familiar with design thinking, it really starts with understanding your customers at a very, very deep level. What are their needs? What are their problems? What motivates them? What are the things that are causing them problems and friction in their business or in their life? And by understanding those completely, only then can you really create solutions that have value. So the steps are understanding the problem, ideation, and then from there you're going through prototyping and iteration in order to really to see if the problem is solved. So by iterating and prototyping, you can validate whether or not you're on the right track before you build your product. The tools out there are so phenomenal. Tools like Figma that allow you to really simulate a software application before you actually build it and engineer it. And you can put it in people's hands and say, "Hey, does this work? Would you use this? Would you buy it? What's it worth to you?" And you can really get that feedback before you actually build it. But we see so many startups that they've got it in their heads how they want it to be. They go ahead and build it in that direction, then they launch it into the marketplace. And when it doesn't get traction, it's a shock. And they say, people will say, well, this part's good, this part's not. I don't really, it doesn't really, it's not really that valuable. All of that stuff was knowable before you spent all that money on that engineering and solution and launching it. So that's what we try to do is we try to slow boundaries down a little bit, say, okay, but let's make sure that you really do things the right way so that when you do decide to build your product, you've all that chaos at the beginning is you've fixed it at at that level, and then your launch is going to be much more successful instead of building it and having all this chaos after you launch and not getting traction, then trying to pivot and pivot and pivot and refactor. And that's the stuff that we really see far too often.
So marketing nowadays is very different from the way it used to be. And it seems to me that you need to spend time, if not money, collaborating with your potential customers and building the kinds of relationships where you can find out this stuff before you get in over your head or go in a wrong direction. People need to be talking to each other much more. And social media provides that in some ways, and so does AI, right?
It does. The opportunities for engagement through online platforms, social media, is phenomenal. We didn't have that a decade ago or so. And companies can really build an audience online even before they have a platform or developed a product. And in doing that over time is can be an extremely effective way to to get traction in the marketplace.
Yeah, use those things for fact finding. Well, thank you so much, Ken Mocabee from Parux. We'll put contact information in the comments so people can get a hold of you. If you've got any other links you want to share, please let me know.
I
And
will, Mary.
thanks again for coming. And I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a call with me at businessriff.com and join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.